How have you grown your introverted intuition, your NI, over the years?
Over the years, I would say there have probably been a handful of things that have made a big impact on NI. So in December, I went to Savannah with a couple buddies, and we spent a week together reflecting on the year and dreaming about what we want 2021 to look like. And this was my first time doing it with a group. Normally, I would do an exercise like this by myself. And one of the downsides of doing it by myself is I tend to ask the same questions, and they tend to be like very TE heavy of like, what are the outcomes for the next year? You know, what are the steps? And like, they tend to be very outcome and externally oriented. And so I went on this retreat, and two of the guys that were there, one was an INFJ, a close friend, and another was an ENFP. And so in this situation, we all came up with different questions, and we collaborated to come up with the collective set of questions that we were going to ask and exercises we were going to do. And one of the exercises we did, this one caught me off guard, and it ended up being the most powerful, perhaps the most powerful exercise we did while we were there. And it was an exercise where we pulled out our phones, we went to our Photos app, and we spent about 15 to 20 minutes scrolling through all the photos we took in the past year. And what we did is we selected in total about 15, maybe 20 photos each that represented and reflected the most meaningful times we had in the past year. Things that just, were highlights of the year. And then once we collected all of our photos, we had a conversation. And one of the key questions was, what were the common trends in the photos that we selected? Because that's going to tell us a lot about what we value, what's important to us. And so I sat there and I went through and looked at all the photos I took in the last year. And it was so refreshing just to see, like, wow, a lot of things have happened in the year. And there were a lot of photos and memories that came up, things I'd completely forgotten because, as intuitives, it can be easy to be very future oriented. So it was really nice to have a little SI practice here and go in the past. And after looking at all the photos and sitting and looking at them, a couple things emerged that were so blatantly clear, but I don't think I would have arrived at those conclusions on my own. Nearly all the photos that I selected had to do with spending quality time with people I care about, whether it was my wife, whether it was unstructured quality time with friends. Like I had a photo for a couple photos, for example, a couple of buddies and I, we went up to live here in Colorado. We went up to the mountains and we went camping, and I hadn't gone camping since sixth or seventh grade. And it was so nice to be immersed in nature, to not have a phone that's constantly buzzing, had no reception. And so anyway, I had photos of like spending unstructured quality time with close friends. I had photos that had to do with art. All that to say, it helped me to see very clearly the things that I value in life, right? Because how we spend our time, how we spend our money, where we devote our attention, all of those things are really strong tells of what is valuable to us, what's important to us. If we ask most people, hey, what do you value? The things that they say they value are normally very different from the things that they actually value. And one of the best ways to identify the things that we value is not to ask ourselves, what do I value? And then write those down. It's actually to look at our money. How do we spend our money? How do we spend our time? And another great example of this is looking at photos. Like, what are the things that we took pictures of? Because the things that we took pictures of are usually a tell of things that are important to us. And so that was an incredibly helpful exercise that helped me to get more clarity on what are my values, what's important to me. And it helped me to forecast what 2021 is going to look like. And it caused me to recalibrate and shift around some priorities, because I started to realize, wow, the things that bring me the most joy in life may not necessarily be the things I would have immediately assumed. So I would say like that was an exercise that was immensely powerful for not only developing FI, but also using the findings or takeaways to forecast for the future.
What we value is shown through our actions. Like you said, how we spend our money, what we actually use our time with. just looking in your photo reel to know what matters to you. Because oftentimes, if you're always like go, 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 you don't really know what your FI really cares about. So really looking at like, oh, what mattered to me? It really helps you recenter yourself. Yeah, it's almost like your FI allows you to tap deeper into your NI. It's like every time you get closer to what matters to you, you start to get closer to the future that you want to.
Exactly. Yeah. Well said. Well said. It was a powerful experience. One of the things I walked away from when I was on the flight back from Savannah back to Denver, and I was, in the airplane, and it was dark, and I was just like, which is great conditions for NI. Like, there's just not a lot of distractions. And what I realized is that for a long time, I thought I wanted to build this huge company. Like, I thought I wanted to be like the CEO of this, build a huge organization and all that stuff. And one of the I was talking to one of my buddies who was also there, the INFJ, and he's got a number of friends that have built very large, successful companies. And when I was talking to him and reflecting, what I realized is that the things that are important to me, spending quality time with in relationships, spending quality time with people I care about, having more unstructured free time to think and explore, spending time in nature, learning new things, traveling. Most of those things would be very difficult to do if I was running a large company, like a large successful company. I wouldn't be able to do most of those things at all. I'd be spending all my time on the business, especially if the company raised investment capital, which was also something that I wanted. And what I realized is that this idea of building a company that was backed by investors was a story or narrative that I picked up. And I thought, that's what I want. Because I see, I look on the cover of Forbes magazine or Fortune or all these different magazines, and you see these people who look very successful. And I just thought to myself, unconsciously, that's what I want too. But going through this exercise and getting to build more relationships with people who are have different levels of entrepreneurial success, walked away realizing that I want to build a company, but I want it to be much, much smaller than I expected before. What I realized is that if it's too big, all the things that I took photos of, I wouldn't be able to do. Spending quality time with my wife, spending quality time with my friends, exploring hobbies, traveling, volunteering, none of those things, or maybe I would say it would be very difficult to do most of those things. So definitely an exercise that I recommend for anybody, especially ENTJs, because our FI is in our back seat. So we're not very aware of the things that drive our value system. And this can be a really great way of externalizing it so that we can look at it and assess.